everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Gretchen and today I'm back with another Women's Prize for Fiction Longlist review, and today's pick is Hangman by Maya Binyam. Now, first things first, I will just be upfront and say that this book is a little strange and it's definitely not going to be for everyone, and I am pretty sure that I'm everyone because I didn't really get along too well with this book, but I still want to talk about it because I do think that there are some parts of the book that are redeemable, and I think that there's definitely an audience for this book and some that are going to enjoy it much more than I did. So first and foremost, this book had me hooked at the very beginning. The premise of the book and the first chapter actually was very promising, and I was super excited about it, and I kept thinking, wow, like this event happened in the book and it's unlike anything that I was expecting. And I kept thinking to myself, wow, I can't wait to see where else this book takes me. And unfortunately, it didn't really take me anywhere, and I think the author was going for a big reveal or a big twist at the end, but I was on to what was happening very early on in the book, and it just didn't end up landing for me. And I think that if I hadn't figured that out and if I didn't see what was coming from a mile away, that I would have enjoyed the book a whole lot more. So let's get into the book and what it is about. So the book follows an unnamed narrator, and basically one day he wakes up and he has a bag packed, he has a plane ticket, and he has a taxi waiting for him to take him to the airport. He really doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't know where he's going. He just doesn't know really any of what is happening and how he got to this point. I assumed that the narrator was living in the States, and we eventually find out that he is heading to his home country, which is in Africa, but the country is not named. Now, as the story progresses, so I mentioned he has this ticket, he is in a taxi, he's on his way to the airport. We start to learn all about like the little mundanities of that trip, and eventually we get to a scene on the plane. So he's on the plane and something happens on the plane, and I won't give it away. I don't think that it's a part of the blurb. It's not in here, so I don't want to give it away, but basically something happens on the plane that is very strange, and it was what hooked me initially. And once the plane lands and he is kind of on his own navigating through the airport, we eventually run into his cousin, and we start to learn more and more about why he is where he is. And what we learn is that his brother is dying, and we eventually go on this journey, for lack of a better term, journey with him trying to get to his brother that is dying. Now, where the story lost me, like I said, I was very intrigued by the event that happened on the plane, and even after he landed and he met up with his cousin, and there were all of these weird things that were happening, and we were just learning, bits and pieces about his story. But what ended up happening was we started to have all of these little micro events that started to happen to the narrator, and he started meeting all of these different interesting characters that would come in briefly, and he would have an adventure or an experience with them, and then before you knew it, he met somebody else and we were going down another rabbit hole, and this basically turned into almost like a choose your own adventure novel where I had no idea what was going on, what was happening, why we were getting into these certain situations, where these people were coming from, who these people were. But what I did learn, like I said, was I started to get that inkling about where the story was going and what was actually happening. And when I got to the end, I realized that I was right, or I say that I was right because I think that I'm right, because it never fully comes out and says what happens. You do have to, put your thinking cap on and speculate a little bit. But to me, it was very clear what happened, and it was what I had guessed very early on. And I just felt very let down. I felt like I could see that coming from a mile away, and I kept thinking that if the author meant for this to be a twist, or she meant for it to be clever, like, I don't know how many people are going to read it to the end and not have picked up on it somewhere along the way. I will say though, I do see that being a possibility, because the stories and all of the events that were happening were just so bizarre that I think a lot of the things that were clues and hints as to what the overall, aha moment was at the end were kind of drowned out by all of just these strange, divergent subplots and, different stories that just didn't seem to make any sense. It very much reminded me, there's a book called, and I'm going to get this wrong, but it's like the adventures of a 100-year-old man that opened a window and climbed out of it, or something to that effect. I don't remember the name exactly, but you just go from situation to situation to situation, and you never really understand how you got from A to B, and everything just seems so coincidental and just unrealistic. And quite frankly, although there was a lot going on and we were told a lot, I never really understood what the purpose or the plot was. I know the story says a lot about homecoming, obviously, him being away from his homeland for a very long time, finding your place in the world, returning home, and also how home can change. And the narrator was, he was, I believe, like I said, in the United States, and he was previously a political prisoner when he was in his home country. So he left, he was gone for very many years. When he left that country, he obviously went to the States where the cultures are very different. So him going back home and seeing how truly different his country was from living in the United States, but not only that, with the 20-some year gap in him being there last, how things are even more different than how his life is currently in the States. So I know it had a lot to say and there was a lot going on, but once again, this is another one of those books that it just didn't land for me for some reason. I know that there's things in this story that I missed, or I didn't take my time or read this book slowly enough to process or catch all of those little things. And I think that maybe in the future I could consider rereading this and maybe digging into all of those things that I maybe missed or went over or like kind of sped through just to get through the book because I wasn't really enjoying it too much. But then at the end of the day, I thought I don't want to reread it. And I don't want to reread it because not only was I not enjoying myself, but the writing isn't enough to make me want to revisit it. The book was very simple, and I think that for as simple as the writing was, I think that it questioned the reader's intelligence. It almost felt like the author was purposely dumbing things down for the reader. And who knows, I may need things dumbed down. But the way the story was presented, the language that was used, the repetition, and the tempo that I found myself reading the book in was just so elementary to me that I was getting super annoyed with it. And I kept thinking to myself, if you have something so important and so profound to say with this book, then say it. Say it like you would want to say it instead of trying to dumb it down to the point where the reader can't even understand what you're trying to do anymore. And I just found that to be very off-putting with the book. I'm curious to know if anybody else experienced that with the language of the book. I didn't hate the book. I didn't love it. This was a 3-star for me. I still have a couple more books to get through that I've already read to film for, but those should be coming out soon. And until we read again, bye.